Okay, you know why, Chair.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Councillor Sally DePay, Chair of this committee. I would like to inform everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet via the Council's website and will be capable of repeated viewing. The images and sounds recording may be used for training purposes within the Council. In order to ensure that the meeting is managed effectively, can everyone please keep to the following guidelines for speaking? Councillors should only raise your hand function to request to speak. Only speak when invited to do so by the Chair. Please switch off your camera and microphone when not speaking, and remember to set your mobile phone to silent for the duration of the meeting. Any views expressed by any speaker at this meeting are the speaker's own, and they do not necessarily reflect the views of the Council. Please can councillors be aware that the web chat will continue to be streamed live 20 seconds after the close of the meeting. This is due to a time delay in transmitting live. I will now confirm the names of the members of this committee. Councillor Sally DePay, Councillor Baker, Councillor Benzer, Councillor Capper, Councillor Evans, Councillor Hardy, Councillor Huddleston, Councillor Kirkham, Councillor Mackey, Councillor R. McEwen, Councillor Roberts, Councillor Scott. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Huddleston.
Thank you. To receive any disclosures of interest on matters before the committee, any disclosable pecuniary interests? Simon?
Sorry, mine is just the other interest, the same as in the last committee, in that I still provide assistance to local organisations, including street traders selling food. So as we're discussing the street trading policy this evening, that's still relevant.
Thank you. Any other interests? Okay, can we approve the minutes of the previous meeting? Can I have a proposer and a seconder to those, unless there's any questions? Thank you, Simon. Rob, thank you, Bob. So we'll go straight on to item number 4, which is the street trading policy. Thank you, Kerry.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll go through the report for street trading. So the Appendix 1 is the draft street trading policy, and also Appendix 2 is the consultation responses. So the reason for the report tonight, members, is that the report confirms the consultation responses received to the draft street trading policy 2024-2027 and to recommend approval of the revised policy. So for members to note the consultation responses in Appendix 2, that the committee approves the amendments proposed in red of the attached draft street trading policy, and that the committee recommends approval of the amended street trading policy to full council. So October 2008, the council redesignated the streets in High Peak in accordance with Schedule 4 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1982 and introduced a street trading consent policy to provide a transparent framework for the decision-making process and to ensure that the system operated within the constitutional arrangements. It is a requirement that licensing authorities regularly review and update their policies to reflect changes in legislation, local circumstances and safeguarding issues. The street trading policy is governed by the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 1976, and a consultation exercise was carried out between the 23rd of April 2024 and the 17th of June 2024, including specific consultation with existing street traders as well as the public. So on Appendix 1, if I just go through the main updates in our street trading policy, it is an existing policy, so it's not a new policy, it is an update from a previous policy. So the main update was around the emissions, and this was to reflect the overall authority's aspirations around climate change and ensuring that all of our regulated vehicles do comply with the emissions. So On page 5 are the emissions there in yellow and red. So the consultation included a reduction in the emissions of street trading vehicles, which contribute towards the council's obligations with regard to the air quality management within the borough. The criteria proposed at first application that vehicles must meet or exceed Euro 6 and Euro 4 petrol emission standards, as they would not be deemed suitable for licensing. For existing vehicles at renewal from the 1st of January 2025, street trading licences would not be reviewed in respect of any licensed vehicle that again did not meet or exceed the Euro 6 or the Euro 4. So we have had 2 representations which are in Appendix 2. These are from existing licence holders, so they've had the street trading licence holders for a number of years with High Peak Borough Council, and the issues that they have raised are around the cost of having to convert their vehicles, so their existing vehicles to convert it, which may run into a number of thousands of pounds, depending on the vehicle and whether or not that can be done. So those are the main consultation issues around that. The rest of the consultation, we haven't had any other issues or any other items raised. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. With regards to the consultation period, the decision date for the new vehicles which are making applications is January 2025. Is that the deadline for that? Would there be a possibility, obviously this is a discussion, to extend the consultation period, extend the period for those 2 existing traders to give them another 12 months to comply? Just wondering what people's thoughts with those, to give them time to get those relevant, get the money in for that. Bob? Simon? Bob, you were first, my love.
Thanks. Yeah, just to echo that point, I think, I mean, from these representations that we've received, having read them now, would it be reasonable to assume that those businesses would be sort of placed at risk, financial risk, if they are forced to comply by the 1st of January? So that's one point. And then my other sort of thought with it is really that one of them isn't due for renewal until April in any case. So the arbitrary kind of date of the 1st of January seems to perhaps be a little bit unfair in that instance. What would be the impact on our, Alicia, on our sort of climate change objectives and so on if we were to extend the deadline?
Yeah.
Okay. The authority's climate change deadlines are 2030. Obviously, we want to move towards that and make sure that you know, all our vehicles are fully compliant as soon as we can. So from that perspective, allowing another 12 months, you know, would not cause an issue, particularly if members agree to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Simon?
Yes, just to reinforce that point, really. I mean, it's not really good regulation stroke legislation to produce something and then 2 months later ask for it to be implemented at a very expensive cost. And I don't want to be part of an organisation that does that in bringing businesses to their knees. So I would reinforce the plea that we look again at the implementation date for this, because I think it's particularly harsh given you know, that we are essentially going to put a couple of businesses out of business, really. So certainly I would back extending that renewal implementation date, and looking at how we link that to the first application, which is slightly easier, of course, because that is something people will be aware of before they apply. And the second point I wanted to ask really is, did we only actually receive 2 responses to this consultation?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have only had 2 representations around that.
So, no, hang on, no, not around that. We only received 2 responses to the entire consultation.
Absolutely, yes.
Ah,
yeah.
right, okay. How was this consultation publicised then amongst street traders who operate in High Peak?
Okay, so all existing traders were notified of it. They were either given a copy of the code. It was on our website. It was available at the offices. We also consulted with our partner agencies, statutory bodies that we always consult with. So every single existing street trader were contacted and given that opportunity.
So therefore, by extending this date, we're not likely to be creating a massive issue. It's in terms of our emissions, then it's literally going to be giving a bit of flexibility that isn't going to really penalise us coming back at the end then.
No, absolutely. That, you know, that would be fine.
Good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Jill?
Yeah. Oops. Thanks, Chair. The first submission that you had, from what I could gather, there was an alternative in that they could plug in, if there was an electricity source, they could plug in, so they wouldn't need to have their engine running. So has that been looked into? Because a similar thing in the Set Valley car park in Hayfield, there's a little Guzzle caravan, and they plug into a power source that Derbyshire County Council have given them, which means they don't need to be running their engine. So that could be an interim thing if we were having this kind of date extended. So Alistair, I don't know if that's been looked into for that particular trader.
Thank you, Chair, if I may. So a conversion would still need to be made, because my understanding is that the current vans run on diesel. So a conversion would have to be made to part of the vehicle to allow it to run the refrigerators or the equipment. And also a hookup would need to be provided. So that may affect the position of the trade-in. So we certainly would have to have a look at that. But my understanding is that a conversion will be needed for the vans either way. They're not compatible to be, they're not electric vehicles, they're not hybrid vehicles at the moment.
Right, it just sounded like they thought it was a solution.
I mean, that is a solution, and that would be the solution, but there has to be a conversion to start with on the particular vans to enable them to be able to plug in and have that hookup.
Right, okay. The other point, I might be jumping the gun a bit because it's on page 14. So it's actually talking about traders being responsible for waste management. Now, I know when we discussed this before, I mentioned that we should include in the policy responsible recycling. So not just the management of waste, but also responsible recycling, because that fits in with our climate change commitments. So is it too late to put that in? It's on page 14 about waste management to actually put something like responsible recycling. So it shows that we are expecting our street traders to recycle where possible.
So we have put on there page 15, point 19, single-use plastics. The trader, as responsible food business operators, should adhere to all regulations, including those enforced by training standards and other government agencies. So that is part of that, but also they'll have conditions that are put onto their licenses. So again, we can reinforce it around the conditions there.
Yeah, I think that's important because I saw that about the single-use plastic, but I think this is slightly different as well, because even if they're using like cardboard containers, not polystyrene, those still need to be, you know, recycled where possible. So just those words to be put in would be really good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Chair.
Thanks. Rob, have you still got your hand up? Any more points on that? Are we happy to propose or move that forward for the consultation with regards to extending that for a 12-month period for existing vehicles? Yeah. Eddie, yeah, are you happy to do that? I've got a seconder and a proposer and a seconder.
Happy to propose that,
Rob.
Chair.
Thank you.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think we don't want to put anybody out of business. We want to encourage trading in the High Peak, and we want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and we're still ahead of the time frames for the 2030. So yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. Okay, should we move on to number 5, the gambling policy?
Yep, thank you, Chair. So I'll just go through that report for members. So purpose of the report is to ensure that the council complies with its legal obligations as set out by the Gambling Act 2005, which requires that the council must consult and publish a revised statement of principles every 3 years. A consultation exercise is scheduled to start in November 2024 for a period of 8 weeks. After the consultation is completed, a revised statement will be brought back for any comment and with any comments to the committee in early 2025 for members to recommend to full council approval. So recommendation tonight is that the committee agrees to the consultation period of 8 weeks, commencing in November 2024, and the draft statement of principles attached at Appendix 1. So there isn't an awful lot of an update on that. So it needs to go out for consultation to our partner agencies again, and for any responses to come back and be considered to be part of that policy. Thank you, Chair.
Super. And will that be at the next meeting, which I think is March next year?
It will be, yes. Thank you, Chair.
Super, thank you. Any questions? No, super. Can we move on to number 6? Bob, put your hand up.
Yeah, it's just a comment that on licensing is something we don't come across very often with the gambling. But the betting shop I put my Irish lottery on last year, I'd had an inspection and it was done properly because the signs was the wrong size. You had to change them. So, you know, good on the team there because it's something we very rarely come across. Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair, we just need a proposer and a seconder for the recommendation.
Sorry, Chair, I've got my hand raised as well. You're on mute, Chair.
Yeah, that wouldn't help, would it? Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, we'll
I've
do
just-
time and then we'll do a proposer and seconder for this.
Yes, sorry, it's just a quick point. In the report, it mentions that this will be an 8-week consultation. Yet on page 4 of the document, 38 of our pack, it says the consultation took place between the 1st of November and the 13th of December. I make that 6 weeks.
Alicia?
Apologies, that's a typo. It will be 8 weeks. It's a statutory time for consultations, so we'll make sure that it is 8 weeks.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a proposer and a seconder for that to be consultation? Thank you, Rob. Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you, Simon. Okay, can we move on to number 6, the animal licensing policy?
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the animal licensing policy, again, for members to note, animal welfare requirements in the UK are spread over numerous pieces of legislation, as listed in the proposed policy. Council's responsibilities under animal welfare legislation are currently discharged by licences issued for various activities and through the conditions applied to each of those individual licences. The purpose of this report is to seek approval from the committee to consult on the introduction of an animal licensing policy for the council. The policy will assist in ensuring that the council carries out its animal licensing responsibilities in a fair, equitable and consistent manner. It will also help ensure that the public, councillors and those engaged in animal licensing activities understand that the law requires and how the council will take its approach to enforcement duties. So the report today is to ask committee for that consultation period again, which will be 8 weeks, starting in November and running to the end of December, or wherever those 8 weeks take us. And it will include members of the council, existing licence holders and businesses, our partner agencies, including county council, police, fire, and any other interested parties in the policy.
Thank you. Do we have any questions before we vote on that? No? Okay, can I have a proposer and a seconder? Oh, Bob?
It was just a question, when, you know, I don't know if I've missed it or something, but when we do the things for animal premises, do these charity cat sanctuaries come under it? Because we seem to have quite a few in the High Peak.
Thank you, Chair. If I can reply, charities are exempt from licensing. Some charities do have a mix, a blend, where they will have, say, perhaps day boarding and boarding establishments there as well. So that element of it may be licensed, but generally charities are excluded from it.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you. Can I have a proposer for this consultation? Thank you. And can I have a seconder? Thank you, Rob.
Oh.
Thank you. Oh, Bob.
Yep, right.
Thank you very much. Okay, number 7, an enforcement update. Do we have any on that list? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this is our standard enforcement update. So to update members in relation to the enforcement activities undertaken within the licensing section in the period since the last meeting of the committee. So the recommendation is that the committee notes the contents of the report. So in the period from the last meeting of the committee, the licensing service has engaged a number of enforcement actions. These activities have involved reactive responses to complaints and intelligence received from the public and partner agencies, as well as proactive compliance checks. It is pleasing to report that licensing section has noted a good overall compliance with the applicable legislation overall. Officers do seek to encourage licence holders to conduct their activities in a safe manner, maintaining good standards and to comply with the law. Officers have to exercise considerable discretion when approaching individual licence holders, as licensees can often be anxious to comply with the law. And for such cases, the officer's role will be there to provide guidance and advice. However, in carrying out their function, officers are authorised with a wide range of powers and may, for example, require entry into the premises at any reasonable time and production of certain documents. So below is the summary in 3.5 around the licenses that we've been processing. So we've got TENS there, late TENS, road closures, so a whole variety in 3.5 there. Also joint visits there, attendance at pub watch meetings, appointments with premise licence holders, and also some information there around the driver numbers there, around renewals, new vehicles, and vehicle renewals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you have any questions, Rob?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to query a couple of things. So the first one is that the number of late 10 applications seems to be quite high compared to previous enforcement reports that we've had. So I just wondered if there was any reason for that, maybe. And the other thing is the small society lotteries, it says 0, but I know of at least one that's definitely applied. So I wonder what period does this cover? I wonder if the one that I know about has just sort of missed the window, so to speak.
Yeah, it probably has missed the window, to be honest. We are working through some of our services now around getting them online and just working through that process, really. So it may well be of one that's just slipped through, really. Sorry, also the first point was?
Just the number of late 10
number of
applications seems to be a little bit higher than usual.
Yeah, it's difficult to determine. Sometimes we do get them through, but we do, you know, if we do get late ones through, we do, you know, speak to the submitters and say, look, you know, it is problematic, it can cause issues, you know, and we don't have the time to consider it always, and you know, they can be refused. So you know, we encourage where we can for us to have an adequate timeline. And where we would see repeat ones, again, you know, we would escalate that a little bit to them to say, look, you know, you risk us not being able to process it on time.
Thanks, Alicia. Just to add to that, because you mentioned it, I do know from the example of the small society lottery that I was aware of, they did find it quite an arduous process. So I think that's probably something for this committee to look at, as to review the policy on that and see if we can simplify things a little. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jill. Jill, you
Thanks,
have your hand
Chair.
up? Okay.
Yeah, in terms of enforcement and powers of entry onto properties, etc., I see that the officers can't go into homes. Now, what if there is a case whereby there's activity taking place inside a house, for example, maybe dog breeding, that you can't get to, but you know it's going on? Is that where the police come in? Because, or do you just not investigate that? Do you hand it over to the police?
Thank you, Chair. I just replied. So we would get a warrant in those cases. So we would try and get as much information as we could, and that intelligent-based desktop work. We would certainly write to the property. We would send enforcement to the property and see if they would speak to us, you know, on the doorstep. To see if we could gain any evidence. So we'd have to build the case up, and we would have to go to a magistrate and that
Right.
to obtain a warrant. So we would have to be able to demonstrate that we have some evidence there to suspect, or you know, that we've got, you know, we've got a breeder, we've got details of where puppies were sold, etc., etc.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Jill. Simon?
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question around the enforcement. We talked about, you know, attending a pub watch and premises license holders, and then licensing enforcement inspections and visits, and you're going to deliver a verbal update on that and joint visits with the police. Are there any emerging issues, or has there anything come out since the last meeting around particular problem areas, problems that perhaps we need to be aware of as a committee, or, you know, to be looking at in future meetings?
Okay, so I've got some further information for members. So this is from the enforcement officer. So in addition to the processing of the new driver applications and renewals, the licensing department has sought to ensure that vehicle standards are being maintained and monitored. Drivers and operators in regard to new vehicles and change of vehicles are being directed to attend vehicle inspections now prior to an issue of the licence plates on their respective vehicles. So any new renewals coming up, they are being inspected. So we're seeing sight of those vehicles. In total, 19 vehicles were inspected. 2 vehicles failed the inspection, including 1 disability adapted vehicle. So that work is ongoing. Inspection and enforcement resulted in these vehicle licence applications being refused, pending rectification of the faults found. The vehicles were later re-inspected and achieved that compliance. And obviously all records are kept on those compliance for any future issues with those. Enforcement action is underway in relation to one of our executive operators at the moment. And that will be coming to subcommittee in due course. Also, the licensing officer, Darren Wood and Sandra, visited the town centre to promote the code around the code of conduct for street entertainers. So giving out leaflets, talking to the street entertainers, and 2 noise nuisance complaints were received, and both matters were resolved in partnership with Derbyshire Police, who are also aware of the code of conduct and assisting with the code of conduct. So this is around buskers and street entertainers. Buxton Carnival that happened on the 13th of July. So joint operations with Derbyshire Police around that, and compliance checks were done. So our officers were out there. Also checks were done on the temporary event notices. Total of 13 premises were visited with licensing and the police. And again, following noise nuisance complaints, both licensing department and Derbyshire Police have found to be in breach of those conditions. And so work has been done with those premises. There's been a number of premises inspected and visited by licensing, so quite a few in Buxton that have been visited, So I have a list of those which I'm happy to share with members individually if that is needed. We don't really have any emerging issues of concern at the moment. I think the increase in the compliance checks on the vehicles is good, and that will continue. We'll also be doing additional work around the animal licensing and enforcement. So those are just a couple of the projects that we're going to be focusing on in the coming months.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I just ask, please, has there been any work done with the police into drugs and on licensed premises, going into licensed premises and doing swab testing, or with a drugs dog?
Not as yet, but we would certainly support anything like that. So you know, we can update on the next meeting as to whether or not there are any of those type of
I just think drugs
visits
is
planned.
an increase in most areas, and I just think, you know, some surprise visits with a drugs dog and police officers and maybe BTP or something might be a little bit of a deterrent.
We have tried in the past
industry
to get the drug dog, and it is quite problematic. So, but certainly it's not put us off. You know, we will if we can. Absolutely, we'll do that and joined up working.
And also, is there any specific campaigns that are going out in the lead up to Christmas? Because obviously this is the time of year when the pubs are getting busier with regards to drug and drink driving. Are there any specific campaigns that you're aware of that are being done?
There's only the intoxicated. So again, you know, I can check with the team as to if there's any promotion or if we are going to be assisting the police with any specific promotion in the coming months, and we can let members know.
Yeah, I just think, you know, a really good visible presence and a united front from licensing and the police, you know, would be great, especially at this time of year. Thank you. Bob, you've had your hand up.
Yeah, just comment following on from yours. As members will probably be aware, in Glossop last week, Barclays Bank was absolutely disused, was found full of cannabis plants. We had a similar thing, was it earlier on this year or last year in the Springs? And does environmental health have anything to do with this, or is it just purely a police matter?
I mean, we may come across it if we're doing a property inspection or something like that. But we would alert the police, absolutely. So, you know, we have, strong links with them. So if we're suspecting there's an issue in any of the premises that we inspect, similar to border control and that type of thing, we, food fraud, anything like that, we link with our partner agencies.
Yeah, because it was just quite a shock living in Glossop. It was all cursed when the bank closed, and the next thing we wondered why the pigeons was high as a kite on the roof. And it's the first time I've ever seen the police issue a press release saying, sorry, there's going to be a very strong smell of weed round Glossopdale until we ventilate the premises and move everything out. It was just quite a shock. And it was only when they was putting some scaffolding up to do some work that they seemed to find the problem. But yeah, no, as long as we work with the others. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Cheers, Bob. Thank you. Does anybody have anything else for this meeting? No? Thank you, Alyssa, for that training earlier on and the reports and the updates. Thank you, everybody else, for your time this evening. And we will see you next meeting.